Hey everybody, my name is Ted Forbes and welcome back to another episode of The Art of Photography. And in today's video we're going to continue on in our series about being a professional photographer. And it's something we started a couple videos ago and I've been pretty impressed, and it's been fun because I've had some good email exchanges with people on this subject, had some really good comments. There's a really good thread in the Flickr group that we keep, where some folks were talking about kind of this controversy of what does it mean to be a professional photographer today. And it's certainly not dead, it's certainly not gone, but I think that our business is changing so much and really has been coming in the last 10 years. There was a recent article that probably a lot of you saw. They were talking about the newspaper, the Chicago Sun-Times, and they laid off their entire photography department. And some of the reasoning, which is very insulting to photographers in general, is that they want to increase what they call crowdsourced photojournalism, so people submitting pictures of events and stuff. And it's kind of sad to see that happen, because anytime you go through weird economic times, and I've seen this because it's cyclic, it goes up and down. When money's flowing, people tend to spend more on photography than they do when things are getting tight. And the reason is because I think because photography is an aesthetic thing, it's a visual thing, it's something that we look at, and you decide there's beauty in it or something you like. It becomes a want and not a need a lot of times. And when people are cutting budgets for things, and I understand where they're coming from on this, I don't agree with it, but things like photography, things like illustration, creative services in general, to people who don't understand the value of those things, they tend to view them as a want and not a need. And so in terms of, well, do we pay rent, keep the electricity on, or pay our journalists, the photographers are less important, so let them go. And I think freelancers feel that crunch too. Obviously the phone quits ringing and work is a lot tighter because people are tightening their budgets, and unfortunately things that are considered wants and not needs are the first thing to go. Now, do I agree with that? No, not at all. I am very passionate about photography. Obviously we're starting to talk about commercial photography and photojournalism here, but I think from that perspective you get into a situation where you probably do, and I certainly do, understand the value of what a good photograph is, what that says, what that communicates, what that says about your brand and your company even. The list goes on, and I would argue that that is the last thing that should go. You've got to stay on top of things, you've got to stay cutting edge, you've got to stay creative. And if you have to cut your budget and your resources, there are ways of doing that without necessarily just making a cut across the board on things. Now, I don't know all the details to what happened at Chicago Sun-Times. It's very unfortunate. It is a sign of the times. I don't think it's doom and gloom saying that professional photography is over with. I think it's just changing. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a race to the bottom, in that you look at how business is structured, and we have demands on us that things need to be faster and cheaper. Now, we also have tools for that now with digital photography and with computer speed and power behind that we can turn work around a little bit faster. And none of that has anything to do with the ability to take a good picture or what kind of time goes into creative work on top of that. So I want to talk about this today and kind of tear it down a little bit. And I want to talk about commercial photography. Where's that going? How can you still make a living as a commercial photographer? And these are some of the things I want to talk about. And because we've made the delineation a couple videos ago, we define what we're saying when we say pro photographer. And by definition, I'm just saying it simply means that a pro photographer is somebody who makes a portion of their income, if not their entire income, on photography. So you shoot pictures and make money on some level. So having said that, and I'm not saying that amateurs aren't good photographers or anything like that, let's be very clear, we're talking about making a living with your camera. And there is a difference. I would divide this in half, because there is commercial photography and there is fine art photography, and you can make a living doing either. But we're going to talk about the commercial side today. So what is the difference between commercial photography and fine art photography? My definition in that difference between commercial and fine art: in commercial photography, you are told what the job is worth and you do the job and get paid accordingly. In fine art photography, you have to do the work first, and then it goes out on the market and you decide what you're going to make on it based on that. So fine art photography, on the other side, has a little more of a gamble to it. But commercial photography is starting to feel a little bit of a choke on that as well, because as I said, budgets are tightening up. People aren't spending the kind of money they used to. Now, what I always have come to understand, and I've mentioned on here before that my father, I was raised in this family, very artistic. My dad was an illustrator, he made his entire living, and he did very well doing it. And his advice to me was always, what you have to do is you have to find who is willing to pay you money for what you do. and who values what you do. And those are the people you want to target. And that's a very broad definition, but I think that can apply for any little niche in photography that you might be in. In that last episode, we looked at some photographers and some different resources, all the way from fine art to commercial art. And I talked about, like my friend Joe, for instance, who shoots this niche of doing mineral photography, which I would never have dreamed even existed until I met him. And he does very well within that niche. There are a lot of collectors who need really good photography because they're buying, selling, and trading minerals and crystals and, what essentially is very much like jewelry in that sense. And, they want somebody they can trust to come in and do that. And some of these people have money and they're willing to pay for it, and they value the creative side. So Joe does a very good job at making a living doing this. And that's what it is. It's finding this niche. So what we're going to do is I want to go over and do some screen stuff, and I want to show you some resources, and I want to talk about, just in general, if you're interested in pursuing this kind of thing, how do you do that, and what do you do? How do you go about that? There's no one way for any person, and I'm probably going to reiterate that several times. You got to find what works for you, but I want to at least get you started with some ideas on the path. So let's go over to the computer and let's take a look at some stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk about commercial photography here, and I want to give you guys some resources of things that probably will draw you in and give you a clue and a really good grasp on what's going on in commercial photography today. The first thing I want to talk about, this is a website called comarts.com. It's actually a magazine called CA, is what it's kind of known as, but Communication Arts is the full title. And comarts.com, I'll put all these links in the show notes. This is a wonderful resource. They've been around for years. They put out an incredibly well-done magazine that's beautifully printed, and they cover basically everything that deals in communication arts or visual arts. So they cover things like animation, they cover photography, they cover illustration, you name it, it's here. Graphic design, anything visual is kind of their bag. And they have a wonderful magazine. Their website is pretty good. And what I like about them is they are very current with what is happening up to date in photography in the commercial world today. They put out a photography annual. In fact, there's a little thing on here. You can view the winners of the 13th photography annual here, and you can kind of go in and search through these. They don't put everything in here. You can see who the jurors were, list of winners. Let's view gallery. So if you want to know what is going on that is really with it in terms of commercial work, this is it. They do a lot of personal work in here too, but there's some outstanding stuff, and I think they really do a wonderful job of this. So this is the really cutting edge stuff. Yeah, see, they want me to fill in my subscription here. So yeah, you do need to subscribe to the magazine to see some of this, but I will say that it is definitely worth it. It's a very, very wonderful resource. And if you're interested in keeping up with things that are current, trend-based, etc., that is one of the places to do it. The other thing, too, is if you are going to look into going into commercial photography, you're going to need a couple things, I think, to start. And this is really difficult to do because a lot of these things, if you're going to start, you have to start at the bottom. So if you don't have a portfolio put together, you're right out of school, I think some of the things you probably should start with are, first of all, shooting the things that you want to be shooting. And like I said, I really live by that your portfolio should not be your greatest hits as much as it is the kind of work you want to be doing, because this is the place to do it, unless you want to be hired to do the same things over and over. So your mileage may vary. But if you're starting out, that's not a problem. You're starting from zero. So that's the place to go. If you're also just starting out, I would look to find professional photographers that are in your area that possibly you could offer to assist on jobs and start learning the business, start understanding how client relationships work and all that stuff. This is way too broad to cover in this video. I'm giving you a very basic overview. But typically, a great way to get work when you're starting out, if you have a portfolio, is to work with an agency. And agents will typically help you get work, and they will help you negotiate how much you're going to charge, and they're a wonderful resource. And if you're starting out, you pretty much need this. Otherwise, you're going to have to cold call clients directly, and while that can be done, if you're not sure what you're doing, it can be kind of confusing, trying to figure out how to price things, trying to figure out what's doable and reasonable for a job. So having an agent really helps with that. There are a couple of them that are really good. Workbook is one that's been around for years, and another one that's kind of the hip, cool thing now is a company called Wonderful Machine, which, sorry, I'm having to Google here and talk at the same time. Wonderful Machine, Wade Griffith, who I do the other show with, is rep by them. It's not simply a matter of you call them up and they rep you. You kind of have to have a portfolio. They need to be confident that they can sell you, so you probably need a little bit of experience. So you'll need to, deal with them and negotiate. But they can be a huge help. And like I said, they can help you negotiate work. They can help you get work, find pricing. I think it's wonderful, too, to go through these websites and see what kinds of shots people are shooting, because basically that's what comes down when you're doing commercial work is you're going to need to have a style and be able to shoot things that are kind of current and fashionable at the time. And that's how it goes. So, you can kind of click in any of these things. I can go under conceptual, beauty, automotive, whatever, and it's going to start listing out photographers. Now, the downside here to agencies like Wonderful Machine or even Workbook for that matter, and there are many more out there, is that I always question, you can obviously see that there are hundreds and hundreds of photographers they represent here. So one thing you want to look into when you're looking for an agent to represent you is, are they going to be giving you in your work enough time? So obviously if they have hundreds of artists here, or hundreds of photographers in this case, how much time are they donating to selling you? And some of them do a very good job of that. I'm not saying they don't, but that can be kind of the downside to agencies, is you're waiting around trying to get work and they're just simply really big. Another option too is to find out if there's any local reps. There are a lot of people out there that do freelance repping, just like there's people who do freelance photography. And typically those people are only going to be dealing with maybe 2 or 3, maybe 5 photographers and not hundreds. And so maybe that is a better way to go. Also, when you sign on with somebody, just look for an exclusivity thing. You don't want to sign into that so you can only get work through them. That will kill your career pretty quick. And so anyway, most, your mileage may vary, but just, it goes without saying, just don't corner yourself into a situation where you only have one possibility. And so, these are really, really wonderful resources for looking at that kind of thing. Another resource that I really like that you need to get interested in if you're interested in doing commercial work is this website, which is called aphotoeditor.com. And this is actually a blog that is extremely good if you haven't seen it. It's maintained by Rob Haggart, who is the former DOP of Men's Journal and Outside Magazine. So he was director of photography at several major magazines. He has contributors on here who are also big in the business. Production director from Wonderful Machine is on here, Jess Dudley. Creative director of consultant Suzanne Stacey. And, anyway, there's some really, really wonderful people involved. And this is a great blog with a lot of resources, and it's not just like, hey, check out some, cool photography techniques and stuff. There, our stuff on here. So like, there's a link in here to the agent list. So if you're trying to find agents worldwide, this is a really good resource too. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. You just, you're looking for somebody who can represent you, help find work, and who can actually do a lot of the cold calling. And that's the tough part about running a photography business and being a freelancer, is that now you're responsible for a lot of things. And like I said, this is just an overview today. We can get more granular if this is something you guys are interested in. We can talk about what all's involved on the business side of things, and maybe that's really a blog post or something separate from this podcast in general. But we're talking about professional photographers here, because you're going to have to deal with your federal taxes. You're going to have to deal with state taxes, probably sales tax. You're going to have to deal with a lot of things. Now, obviously, you need to be a very good photographer and very capable, and with a good sense of what's going on in the world of photography, particularly the commercial world, and you're going to need to be able to produce results efficiently, quickly, and keep clients happy. That's enough for a full-time job right there, and actually finding work is another story. So that's why agents can be a good resource. So again, links will be in the show notes, but a photo editor is great, and list of agents worldwide they've got on here. So anyway, there's some really, really, really good stuff. The other thing that I would highly recommend you do, this is Target's website, is go check out what's currently going on with certain people. And this is another important thing, because you want to find, and this, no matter what you're doing on a commercial level, whether it's a niche thing or whether you're going for a more broad-based thing, the niche thing tends to be easier. But I think one thing to do is keep a keen eye as to what's going on that people are doing. Now, I bring Target up as an example because, Target, it's affordable stuff. It's, wide range of things. It's kind of like the Amazon.com, but it's still actually a brick and mortar store. But if you look at the photography in here, and I think this is the important thing, we can shop patio and garden here. Notice how many white backgrounds there are with objects cut out that float on the top. And I can tell you how this is done. This is done as cheap as possible. They're using probably in-house photographers. They probably have an in-house studio. I don't know this for a fact, I'm guessing. So if you work for Target and you know different, feel free to correct me. But this is more assembly line stuff. They just need the picture taken because somebody needs to come here and see what kind of outdoor picnic table they're getting into. That's all this is. And so that's why everything has a white background. It's kind of vanilla. Even shots like this that are also outdoors, they're just, they're not great shots. I mean, they serve their purpose. And so obviously if you are trying to find a niche, Target is probably Your mileage may vary, but it may not be what you are interested in going after. It might be if you are happy with doing assembly line kind of, clip art shots like this, but most people, I don't think it's going to be. Also, I can guarantee their budgets are going to be a lot lower too. So that is one thing to consider. Crate and Barrel fits somewhere in the middle. They have product stuff in here, but it's obviously set up, and the quality on this is a little bit better than Target, and it kind of goes in line with their general product line, is a little more high-end than Target as well. So something like this is probably still going to be very studio-based. I'm not sure Crate and Barrel may be doing this in-house. I don't know. But the reason I'm using these product things as examples is one thing that's really changed the commercial photography world in the last few years is the advent of stock photography. And stock photography makes things a little bit difficult sometimes because, people can just go out and buy their final photo without having to go set it up and take it, and it's much cheaper. And I certainly don't blame businesses for wanting to do that. But what you want to look for are clients that cannot use stock. Like, for instance, Crate and Barrel have products they sell, so they can't go to Shutterstock or one of those companies and buy stock work. So this is a company that's probably going to be, more apt to hire photographers because of the quality of what they shoot. And they have an eye for design, and they have a high standard. So they want to hire, this is the perfect storm for somebody who wants to shoot professionally, is somebody who likes what your work. They hire you to do what you're good at, and they value the image. And I think that's really important. So Crate and Barrel are a wonderful example of that. Here's another one, Dean and DeLuca, which deal in food, and you go look at the photography on here. It is beautiful, and it's a mix. They're going to have some clippy kind of white background things, and then they have some stuff that's set up as well, which can probably tell you that they're selectively spending money on setup shots. And everybody's budget goes down, I understand, and things change, but again, the quality's pretty decent, and it's something that they can't use stock photography for. They've got to be able to show you what you're getting, and that's fairly important. So anything like that, and this is just go to the bookstore and look at magazines on cooking or fashion or clothes. Those are all great ways to go look, and basically what I'm saying is you want to discern between the types of potential clients that are, doing cheaper photography that's quicker versus those that are willing to pay for something that's really nice. So I think that's a really important thing to consider when you're looking at commercial photography, and particularly if you're interested in going down that road. And I've also talked about the niches before, like my friend Joe, who does the mineral photography, or any kind of niche thing that's like, something people are going to be dealing with when they're buying and selling, and it's important to them. I think fine art is another thing, people who collect paintings, but you got to go find out who those people are, and you've got to find a way into it. Obviously, the more small niche stuff works really well, and you're probably not going to find that through an agency necessarily. So that's going to be more go-getter kinds of things. But this is all, if you're interested in shooting commercial photography, this is the direction that you need to go in. So, and obviously it's competitive. So something, that's a little more high-end that has better photography is going to be something that's harder to break into. But this is what you want to be looking for, and this is what you want to be gearing your work towards if you're, working on doing that. So anyway, just some things to think about, and I think the big one too is to look at comarts.com because I think this is going to give you a great overview not only of the best work that's being produced, but also what's popular, what's trending, and also look at the clients that are hiring. You'll find a wide range. Typically, their photography annual is a juried competition, so they will get photo editors, other photographers, magazine directors, things like that, people who know what they're talking about, and they will go jury the show, and people submit work for the show, and then it's chosen based on a number of criteria, but it's trying to feature the best commercial work that's out there, and that's really important. They also have, the magazine, which has a lot of wonderful resources, a lot of interviews with people who are making this happen and doing a good job at it, and these are the kinds of things you want to be looking at. And you're going to realize that you're going to find clients that are real big name clients that want to pay for photography. And you're also going to find people that may be smaller, that didn't have the budgets, but they were a little more edgy and allowed the photographer to do something that's a little different in terms of work. And so this is a way you can learn about that. In their magazine, typically they will interview people, and they do a lot of running of content that talks about the business. So those are some great places to start. And again, this is just a rough overview of basically commercial photography photography and what you can look for. I'm sure some of you are probably going to notice that I did not cover weddings and senior pictures and stuff like that. And I don't think that that's really the same thing. I don't think that's an agency type of thing necessarily. And I think there's a lot of resources, so I did not start with those. But those are other options, and they're still professionals. I just was not talking about them here. I'm talking about editorial work for magazines. I'm talking about advertising. I'm talking about that kind of professional work. And as you can see, when you dig into this, there's still a lot of stuff out there. And photography is not dead. And yes, there is such thing as a professional photographer. Okay, so we have looked at a lot of resources here, and I hope that this maybe gives some of you a starting point if you were interested in doing this on some level. Obviously, there are a lot of different ways you can earn a living as a photographer on a commercial level. And, you know, some of these, very few of them, but there are some full-time positions that are still out there. And, you know, there are a ton of freelance opportunities, and there are pros and cons to doing both. And I hope this kind of gives you a little bit of a clue of what might work for you if this is something you're interested in, or if nothing else, just to see how it all works. So anyway, in the next episode, we will cover the fine art side of things, which is a little bit different too. And for now, I think that's enough. So once again, this has been The Art of Photography. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Later.